Hey, I'm Brooke Halliday, licensed professional clinical counselor and your host of Coloring Outside the Lines. I believe that we are the byproducts of our experiences and the environments in which we were raised, and most of us have earned a few scars from those things over the years. I've been making it my mission to help people learn to accept themselves and have compassion for everything that they've survived. Through deep and vulnerable conversations with some amazing women, you're going to hear about major moments in their life when they chose to color outside the lines and demonstrate firsthand just how capable we all are. So get ready to be inspired as we color outside the lines and make something beautiful. Lindsey is a financial therapist that I met on Threads. She is here to help you feel excited about money. Lindsey believes that personal finance isn't just a math problem, that there is always so much more to the equation than that. She helps her clients understand their thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Lindsey helps her clients find the root cause of their money mismanagement while helping them set goals and create an action plan to make their dream life come true. Listen now as Lindsey tells us about her personal experiences with finance, including how she became the financial therapist that she is today. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know anything about your education or anything like that either. And
Okay.
so why don't we start there? Why don't you tell me about your education, your business structure, and we'll kind of start future and we'll work backwards today. How about we do that?
Yeah. Okay. So I graduated with my psych degree, then prairie care. So I worked inpatient psych for people that don't know, inpatient psychiatric for a couple of years. And actually that's when I started going to school for school counseling. That was like my path. I was like, I'm going to be a school counselor. That's it for me.
Oh,
Yeah. And then the social workers at the psych hospital pulled me aside one day and they were like, you can't be a school counselor. You need to be a social worker. And they like broke it all down for me. Basically, again, going back to optionality, they were just like, you have 1,000 different options with social work degree and you
yes.
don't with school counseling.
With any type of straight counseling, you don't. I wish I had gone for
No.
social work.
What is yours again? What's your
Counseling
life?
psychology.
Oh, you are? Okay. So yeah, so I was already in my program. I was a semester in and when this conversation happened and I was like, all right, you guys are right. And I had already taken an extra gap year that I wasn't prepared to take. So I felt already behind, like I had all the feelings. And
Mhm.
then but they convinced me and so I simultaneously withdrew from the counseling program, reapplied to the social work program. I got accepted. So then I took another like the summer semester off and I started back up in the following fall of
Whoever told
2017.
you to do that, though, was
Oh,
literally a godsend for you.
life changing, life changing. So it's like, it's so cool how, like, in the journey, I've heard so many times like that, like when you look back and see all the different dots, you can actually connect them. It's like that is like literally falling into place now that I'm like totally aligned in my business model and the things that I'm doing now. It's like it's the full circle moments are like happening and it's so
Yeah.
fun. But I digress. So yeah, so I went then for social work and I graduated with my social work degree in 2019, my master's. And then I started working at a clinic, a federally qualified health center, FQHC, which are awesome resources. There's 18 of them in Minnesota. They're wonderful. They do a lot of like warm handoff stuff. So I was a behavioral health consultant. So I pushed into the medical and the dental side, providing resources. And then I also did part-time outpatient therapy there also. So I did a lot of coping skill stuff, which like ties into my book and the things.
Mhm.
And then COVID. So we did a delayed
Right.
honeymoon. Our honeymoon was 5 months after our wedding. And it
Wait,
was
when did you get
February.
married? Because my honeymoon got canceled because of COVID too.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
I was married September. Well, we planned to do a delayed. So we got
Yep.
married in September 2019.
So did we.
Oh, really? What's your wedding date?
September 21st.
Oh, on the 14th, 1 week apart. Oh, funny. That's so funny. Oh my God, that's amazing. So we were in Hawaii and I found out in February 2020 that I was pregnant.
Oh,
Well, then COVID happened. So
yeah.
I'm working at this clinic. They furlough all of us, obviously. Like, no, we weren't seeing patients, whatever. And then after that furlough, this was finally in April, they furloughed us. And I just didn't go back. Like, once they started taking people back, that was when we were still like cleaning groceries and like the whole thing. And we didn't know what COVID could do to a pregnant woman, the baby, all that stuff. And so we were just like, we want to keep this baby safe. Like, and so
I
I
was
became,
pregnant. My first pregnancy, I got pregnant that summer of COVID too. So I totally know where you're coming
yeah.
from.
Yeah. So it was just, yeah. So then I always say like I became a stay-at-home mom before I was even a mom. Like it was just like kind of
Mm-hmm.
how it happened. And so yeah, it was just kind of crazy. So then as we discussed, going into motherhood was really hard for me. And I vividly remember being on a conference, like a virtual conference, and they were talking all about postpartum and motherhood. And it just happened that like that was the session, and I went to it, and I happened to be pregnant, whatever. And they were talking about how men can experience postpartum symptoms also. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Went to my husband. I was like, you are the more anxious one of us. You are really going to have a hard time when this baby comes, and I'm here for you. I will support you, like all the things. And baby comes and he's cool as a cucumber, and he's just like being, number one dad. And I'm like a total wreck. And my whole world got flipped upside down, which I was like truly like to my core shocked by. I was like, I am
Mm-hmm.
literally coping skill queen, and I am incapable, right? Like it just like
Yeah.
it was not good. And so 9 months in, when my daughter was 9 months, then I started writing my book. I was like, I just need to do something, but I'm not willing to not be home with her. So then it was like this catch 22 of like, what do I want to do? And that's really kind of where my business started, even though at the time I was like, oh, I'm not an entrepreneur. I'm a published author, but entrepreneur, no way. And now it's
That
like,
word scares so many people. It's just, but like, it's almost stupid easy to start a business. It's a different thing
right.
to make it successful, but so
Totally.
many people are so afraid to even just start.
Yes. Yes. And that was, I mean, literally, I was just like, I like couldn't use that word for so long. And then, yeah, so then I ended up writing and publishing my book, which was awesome. And then I actually started taking postpartum moms as clients for a while, because I was like, well, I'm like, I struggled so much. And then I kind of was like getting out of it and feeling good and like transformative and all the things. And then I just knew in my gut, though, I was like, I don't want to do this long term. Like, this is fine right now. And we have a lot of, it'd be like breastfeeding our babies as we were like doing a coaching session or whatever. And I was like,
Yeah.
I mean, this is cool, but like in 5 years, when I'm not in this type of thick of it anymore, I could already tell you like this isn't it for like ever. And so it was good to like get back into it to like help people. That's always a good feeling to help people, right? But then I actually found out I was pregnant again, which planned great, all good. I was listening to a book called How Not to Hate Your Husband After Kids.
Yeah.
And I was just doing it preemptively, because I was like, I will not go through what I went through with my first again. Like I will outsmart it. I will do whatever I need to do to like not
Oh,
experience it again. Um, and so just preemptively, I was listening to it, and it's really witty. I would actually recommend it for any like new moms or moms going to be moms. I don't know, all the things, but it was cute. But in that book, she mentioned the two words financial therapist. And I literally stopped the book and was like, what is that? It needs to be me, and I need to be it. And so I went home and just like Googled everything I could and found out that I am qualified to get the certification as a master's level social worker. And I have a rule. I wait 48 hours before any big purchases, just, to curb impulse stuff.
did
But
you
I
have
talked to
that
my,
before you were a financial therapist?
yeah, I did. Yeah. Yeah. And this is why it goes so well for me, is like, I love mental health. I love therapy. I love all this stuff. But I've also been on my own financial wellness journey aside from kind of all of that for 8 years. So I've already been really involved in like understanding my finances and how money works. And I listened to like money podcasts for fun, which I thought was normal until my best friend pointed out to me. She's like, people don't just like do that. Like, stop giving me your podcast recommendations, because that sucks. And I was like, oh, what? Like what? And so then it was like my two things that I love. Like, I like love cranking numbers for fun. Like, I love doing like the calculations, but also like the emotional side, like everything about it felt so aligned. And my husband always tells me, he's like, I can tell that you love something when you just don't stop talking, and you're talking a million miles an hour, and you haven't stopped talking about the certification program, and you haven't stopped talking at a million miles an hour for 2 days. So he was like, buy the freaking program. And
Oh,
so,
yay, husband, being so
yeah,
supportive. We all
yeah,
need somebody like that in our life.
yeah, no, he was awesome. He was like, let's just like go for it, do it. And I did, and I cranked. That program usually takes people 6 months, and I cranked through it in 3 weeks. I did nothing but like eat, breathe. I was waking up at 4:30 a.m., doing the material before, doing all the modules, the activities, like everything I had to do. I mean, I didn't watch a single show, movie, anything for 3 weeks. Like, I didn't read another book. Like, I just was like lasered in. Kids were napping. I was pregnant, like just all the things. So it was just, and then I got the certification, and And I was like, all right, now it's time to figure out how the F to actually run a business because don't know
Yeah. So
that.
do they give you any type of guidance around like what it looks like to work with people doing financial therapy? Or is it really like the Wild West? You get to do it, make it whatever you want, be creative with it.
It's just a certification. So really like because I don't have my clinical licensure and that was part of my hesitation to go back to therapy is like I don't want to be under supervision. I don't want to do that. I had one great supervisor, one not so great supervisor, and I just didn't want to deal with that and
Absolutely.
so yep. And I didn't want to wait, quote unquote waste years being underpaid for doing the exact same work. Like I just the whole
Oh my
model of it
gosh. Yes. We could go on a whole nother tangent about
that
that.
truly and it's really hard for me and I see a lot of my girlfriends who are therapists and they are struggling with like being underpaid or not getting paid well or just the whole thing and I'm like that's not it because here's the thing being part of the financial like knowing the finance side of it I finally have gotten to a point in my life where I was like I deserve to be paid what I am worth and that is not going to happen in a typical clinic setting like I was in before. I actually got paid quite well at that clinic. It's just I didn't want to go through dealing with insurance, doing all that. So what I do now is I'm technically a certified financial social worker and coach. And so I practice, and I don't have like an EHR. So I practice it ethically from like a licensing standpoint. So I still like hold my license as a social worker through the board of social work, like all the things, but
Hmm.
I bill as a coach. So I can work like a lot of my clients. I have a few in California, a few in North Carolina. Like I'm across the whole
Awesome.
nation, which just gives me so much more flexibility. Like I said, I don't have to have an EHR. I don't have to bill through anybody. I don't have to like get approval from, for a diagnosis, whatever. I'm not diagnosing anymore. And I'm totally fine with that. I don't think there needs to always be a diagnosis. So I'm good.
Girl. I'm with you.
Singing your song.
Yes. What does it look like when somebody reaches out to you? So I find your website, I send you an email or submit a form or whatever. Like, what does that process look like?
Basically, we just set up I always do a free consultation. Even there's been so many people that are like, no, I just want to schedule the initial. And I'm like, no, like I want to schedule the consultation because it's a working relationship. And I want to make sure
Hmm.
that we're both fit for whatever it is that we need. A lot of it is making sure that like they aren't reaching out to me to like have specific financial advice, right? Like I don't do financial advising. That's a totally different ballgame. And so I want to be really clear with people like we are doing the hard work of like why are your habits what they are with money and then also changing those while giving you like I've always like even in my past work did solution focused brief therapy
Hmm.
always. And so I'm very goal oriented, I'm very action oriented, and that is true for my practice now. And so we always do the free 15-minute, almost, I have like 98% people schedule with me then. And then I do a 90-minute, what you would basically call a diagnostic assessment, but it's just the initial where it's like we do the deep dive into like, what did your childhood look like? What is, tell me all the things, like tell me where you're at presently. Tell me what you did, during your childhood stuff and then what are your goals. We always end with goals because one, I think it's really hard to like rip open those band-aids and then just like let people on their way without talking about like okay, how are we going to like now, the goal setting part is like the really fun part. People get to dream and be so excited about like what they can accomplish in their lives and that kind of thing.
And that
And then
has to be like majority of the reason why people reach out to you, right? Is that they have these goals and things that they want to, achieve in their life and they don't know how to get there. And you're like that life preserver, whatever.
yeah, yeah, keeping them afloat. Yes,
Yep.
a lot of it is actually I work with a lot of young families too, where it's like, oh my gosh, we're pregnant or we have young kids and we want them to go to college and not have all the student loan that we have and how do we do that? And then I'm like, okay, love that for you. Let's set yourself up for success before we set your kids up for success, right? That is the best thing you can do for your kids. And so
Hmm.
that's a lot of the work I do. But it's funny because so many people come to me for one thing and really what they're looking for is a totally different thing. And they don't even realize it until we're kind of like working through some of that. But really what
Oh,
people
cool.
want it's ease. They want control. They don't want to feel stressed constantly by
Hmm.
suffocating under debt or being in this cycle. Like so many people are in this like the cycle of like they're good, they're out of debt, and then all of a sudden something happens and boom, the debt happens again. And then they're feeling guilt and shame and embarrassment. And then they kind of get themselves, they crawl back out, but then they see this cycle happening over and over and over again. And they're sick of it and they just want out. That's so common. And so we set up things to get them out of that. And it's worked really well and people are really successful in it. So it's super fun. But yeah, subsequent sessions for me are then 60 minutes. And typically I see people for, I would say on average, like 6 sessions, probably weekly, maybe bi-weekly, just kind of depends. Much more than bi-weekly. A lot can happen in 2 weeks when you're talking money stuff. So we try
Yeah.
and kind of keep it within the 2 week visit for a while, but then they switch to like a monthly maintenance situation where go out on your own, have a couple money dates with your partner, see how that goes without me being involved in the money date, right? Like, what are those conversations looking like for you guys? And then we might do like 1 3 month appointment out where it's just like, all right, let's fine tune some things, see how that's going. And then they're free to spread their wings, do their thing. And if they need me, they can always reach back out. Yeah.
Is that like conversations about budgeting or priorities or values? How do you approach it? I know there's different people who approach money in different ways. Do you do them all? I guess I'm uneducated in that realm of things.
Kind of everything. So I practice intentional value based spending. So I actually don't, in my life personally, I don't use a zero based budget because it just doesn't work for me. I don't like tracking. I suck at that. Like it's just not for me. And I think that's what gets so hard about personal finance is there are so many correct ways to approach it, but it's overwhelming because and one person is telling you one thing and another person is telling you another thing. And frankly, people are so polarized and it shouldn't be. And because people are polarized on social media because it gets them attention and likes and whatever. And I think that's bogus because a lot of different things can work for a lot of different people. So it's really just educating them about like, okay, what is truly going to work for you? Like, and so I think that's what gets so tricky is like, I can give you, like, I have a money map of like the 7 basic steps, right? That like every expert kind of has like their essentially the same version of that, just maybe a little different numbers here and there, whatever. But it's basically the same. You can follow that, but it's like the fine tuning that gets really challenging when you don't have that additional support to be like, what about this option? We're just so tunnel vision because it's like what we saw or what we do and what we have done for the last 30 years is like what we expect that we
Hmm.
should see. And it's like having that other perspective of like, what about this option? And then like taking a sigh of relief, like, oh, yeah, there's other ways to go about it, And it's hard to answer that because I think there's so many different like things that I do with really tailoring it to each individual person or people that I work with.
So I heard you say that you were on your own financial journey and as a trained therapist too, like you have to, or a social worker, you know that everything comes from the past. Like we're acting based on our past stuff. And so I'm curious, like, what in your life did you experience that got you interested in money or put you on the path of psychology or financial therapy, all of the things? Give us kind of the background for that now, the groundwork for you.
The lowdown, yes. So that's called your money story for those that don't know, and everyone
Okay.
has one, and everyone has a unique money journey, money story, and it all stems from essentially your childhood. And there's different factors that play a role, obviously, like how your parents raised you, what were your societal expectations and cultural norms. All of these things play a factor. But for me, from like the money side of it, money was a big point of contention between my parents. Like it was constantly like if money was brought up, it was inevitably ending in a fight, and it was uncomfortable and awkward and scary sometimes. And so we just didn't talk about it. And then my parents filed for divorce when I was, and so because of that, I kind of equated in my own young brain, my logical brain, like money equals bad, right? Like funny, bad things
Yep.
happen. And so then when my parents filed for divorce when I was 12, and they didn't finalize until I was 15, so it was a over 3 year process, very drawn out, very very horrible. Like they just
Oh,
really, it was bad. And a
did
lot of
you
the
know details of that? Being 12, you're like aware of things that are happening at that point in time to some extent.
Yeah, yeah. We knew a lot of it. My brother and I, my brother's older, and we yeah, it wasn't good. And both of my parents, really kind of had their own issues through all of that. Like there was drinking, there was a lot of stuff. And so, and I actually, well, I'll get to this. And because of that, it was like he's not paying child support or my dad wouldn't leave or this or whatever. And it was a mess. I was like, I don't want that in my life. Like whatever this is, I don't want that. And then more things happened and it was really bad. My house wasn't great for a while and I ended up living and moving kind of with my best friend. And so her parents were together happily, and their whole house felt different. One, they always had an open door policy. That was kind of like their house was where we hung out. It was always just, everyone went there.
That's like
And
parent goals. Like I want
yeah,
my kid when he gets older to like want to bring his friends here and his friends want to come here.
yes, totally. And I truly feel like the way, at least from like what I saw, the way to be that house, because I also know my mom wanted her house to be that house and it just never was. And
Mhm.
I can tell you because they weren't happy. There was no, like, you can feel it. You can feel that
Yes.
energy. And so
10,000% yes.
yes, and they had, like, this aura about them. Like, I can't tell you how many times I would, like, show up and nobody would be home, and I would just, like, hang out. Like, open door policy, it's a safe place to be, here I am, like, but, like, if I spilled something, which, I mean, this didn't happen, but, like, I knew that, like, if I had, like, Kool-Aid or something and I spilled it on the white couch, they would be like, "No big deal, we'll get it clean," or, "We'll get a new cushion," or, "We'll get a new effing couch if we have to." Like, who cares? Like, they just it wasn't this underlying, like, oh my god, you can't do anything, you can't breathe, you can't move, because if you move and then you're going to break something, and it nobody cared, it was fine. And it led to this, like, safety and security of, like, oh, money, like, solves some of this, where you don't have to be on high alert and hyper vigilant all the time, and you have this, like, we can just get a new one, it's just stuff kind of
Yeah.
situation. And I was like, wow, like, that was so different. Granted, they're quite well off, and that really helps. And so, not that I really recommend this book, but the Rich Dad Poor Dad, for anybody that's read it, knows that it's like, Robert Kiyosaki or whatever had, like, kind of his dad's version of living and then a friend's dad's version of living. And that's kind of how it felt like looking back for me. It was very much like I had what I had in my parents' house. And there was that where it was like I remember, her mom came home, and we're still best friends. And her mom came home one day and she brought me a salad spinner when I was like a young adult. And I remember it, like, I still have it. I was just like, you mean you, like, went to the store and then you, like, bought me this? Because it's
Oh.
because I was, like, marveling at the fact that, like, berries could get cleaned in this thing, and I was like, it was so cool, and I was, like, helping her clean the berries, so she just bought me my own. And I couldn't get my dad to buy me jeans when I was a kid. Like, buying tampons was a struggle sometimes. Like, I just constantly heard these messages like, "We don't have enough money, we can't afford that," like, this and that, whatever. I lived out of a suitcase for years, and then their parents just, like, bought me a salad spinner. And
But
I
it
was like,
but it was so much more than a
it
salad
was
spinner,
so much more than a salad spinner.
and I can see that in your face when you talk about it.
They are, like, and I still, like I said, I mean, I'm very close with them, and so I just remember being like, that's what I want. And so fast forward, this is my late teens, early adult, whatever. And then fast forward, I met my husband when I was 24, and I kind of, like, pretty early on, we knew, like, all right, this is it for us. Like, you are my person, we are together, like, whatever. And I remember then being like, I don't know how the F money works, but I'm not losing this man to money,
Oh.
right? Like, I don't want that to be our
Mhm.
division. And he and I came from totally different backgrounds. His parents are together, very happily, have gone through, their ups and downs as any marriage does, but they are very strong. And yeah, and I think he thought some of my decisions were quite reckless. He's very, like, stable, security, whatever. And that's what was so, like, attractive to me at the beginning. Yeah. And so I just knew. And so, like, we kind of just had a really frank conversation. I was like, I want to start understanding this. Like, let's start learning together. And we did. And we were very aligned on our goals and how we want our family structure to look. And it's just kind of evolved. He doesn't like the nitty gritty, like, number stuff. I do all of, like, our finance stuff and bring him in for, like, our money dates and stuff like that. But which he's so thankful for. He's like, God, I was like, he was investing a really small amount, and now we're investing together way more and stuff like that. And he's like, we are where we are because of, like, how much you love this and how educated you are in it. Because he wouldn't have taken the initiative. Like, he'll say this, he wouldn't have taken the initiative to learn either. And so us learning together has really made us really strong. And I think that we're in a really, healthy, solid place because of what finances and money have really, like, the vehicle that has led us to making good choices in our life. And so
Oh, I guess being a nosy Nelly that I am, I'm curious, like, what is your guys' lifestyle like? Do you guys travel? Do you buy things? Do you not buy things? What do you have hopes for with regards to, like, providing for your kids and all of that stuff?
we actually quite literally have a document. Well, I'll give you when I was pregnant with my second, I kept having this recurring intrusive thought and nightmare that I was going to die during childbirth. I was just, like, convinced of it.
Ooh.
Horrible. Not ideal, right? One day at, like, 3:30 a.m., I woke up and I was like, if I die in childbirth, he is going to have no idea how to even pay our mortgage. Like, I do it, and he just doesn't know. And we've never really had to have the conversation. So I literally made, like, a 12-page document of, like, this is where all of our stuff is. This is the steps to take in the event of my death. Don't do this, cancel that. Like, I just, like, went for it. It was, like, just brain dumping. And he woke up. What are you doing? After I was done, I was like, this is what I made for you just in case, like, something happens to me. He's like, thanks. that's not going to happen, but thanks, and like, obviously I live to tell the story. Like nothing happened. Actually, my second birth was beautiful, but that has really, actually, we still have it. And now it just kind of gets updated here and there as needed. And we have all of our goals as a family listed on there. So like we break them down into short term, midterm, long term. And we just have all of kind of our stuff right there. And it's a great thing to bring up. And when we're starting our money dates, because then we can be like, hey, is this goal still, we always do a evaluation and revision. And like, are we still on track to hit this goal in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever, which is, it's super fun. And I'm so happy that like, despite having all of those, intrusive thoughts and whatnot, it's really come to like this beautiful thing a tool that we use a lot. But to kind of answer your question, yes, we travel a lot. We love to travel. We just got back from Sedona, which was, you and I talked a little bit. It was amazing. Yeah. Oh my God, it was amazing. 2 years or 2022. Yeah. So 18 months ago, we spent a month in Switzerland. He got transferred over there for work.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, really. And we had a 20-month-old. Like, if people are like, you can't travel with kids, like your whole life, I'm like, I travel with my kid all the time and they're awesome and I love it. Like, it was awesome. And on the back end, so on the way back, we stopped in Faroe Islands, which is this like amazing, magical place, right in between like Iceland and Norway, like in the ocean there. It's tiny. It's owned by Denmark. Look it up. It's amazing. So yeah, travel is huge for us. I think our biggest thing that we are totally aligned on is we are very willing to make sacrifices in the same places and like have extra money to do other things that we want. So like, we live in a really small house. I mean, it was a 2-1 actually, we had 4 people living in a 2-1. So like a two bedroom, 1 bath house. So our kids were sharing a room. Obviously my husband and I were sharing a room. And so we just literally a couple months ago put a basement downstairs so my kids could have their own space and our primary could be a little bit bigger, which is actually where I'm recording at. We have our little alcove is my office. But we went back and forth on the decision for a long time. We bought this house in 2016 and it was going to be, our quote unquote starter home, like everyone says. And we were just like, why do we need this to be our starter home? We will have this thing paid off in a decade. Let's just stay here and throw extra money at other goals, other things that we want to do. And, there's other people on the other side of the spectrum. And I'm not saying what we're doing is right. I'm saying it's right for us. Right. And that's a really important distinction is I don't need to live in a 3-level, 5-bedroom house. That's not something that if we did that, we could do that. But if we did that, that would mean cutting out a lot of the other things that we want to do, such as travel, such as, have a little bit more flexibility, such as retire early. All those kinds of things are how we're impacting our decision. As of now, we're on track we'll probably retire by the time I'm 53, he'll be 55, because of like some of the decisions that we made. And these are big decisions. I'm not talking about like, should I get this bag of chips or should I not get this bag of chips? Like, I don't care about $3 decisions as much as I care about like the bigger decisions. I think those little decisions add up, and I coach a lot of my clients on like how that's, that their DoorDash stuff or their Amazon Prime purchases are making.
That's your really viral video, right?
Yes. Oh my God. That is craziness too right now. Oh my God. That's just a whole nother weird thing that's happening. But yes.
I mean, that's a good segue because there's a lot of, I don't know if it's myths or misconceptions about millennials and what we do with our money, because you have to be at similar age to me. And so like, what is your stance on that as a millennial who's good with their money, done some of this stuff? When you look and see other people who are like struggling to afford a house or get out from under student loan debt, like, do you have thoughts, feelings, opinions about that stuff?
Certainly. One thing I ask and I push a lot of people on is like, why do you want a house? Why do you want to buy a house? Why is that your goal? And because this is the hardest part about goal setting, right? Is people are like, well, I want this. I'm like, all right, cool. Why? And they're like, well, because I want it.
Yeah.
Right? Tell me more.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
I'm pushing you on that. I'm pushing you. And the thing is, we bought a house. Buying a house was never my dream. I didn't really give a shit. My husband very much like wanted a house. Like that was his thing. Back when he bought it, we weren't like, we hadn't done all the work that we had, have we done now. But now it's really interesting to talk to people. I'm like, why do you want a house? And they're like, well, that's what you do. It's like the same thing. And it's kind of like interesting. And this is a bit of a tangent, but bear with me because it makes sense. It's like for our whole like first 25 years of life, we were basically told what to do, right? You're 18, you graduate, you go to college for 4 years, you graduate again, you buy your first pet, then you meet your person, and then you get married, and then you have your first kid, and then you buy your starter house, and then all of a sudden it like stops. You got your 2.5 or whatever, 1.5 kids, your dog, and
it's that checklist.
It's the checklist. Yep. For
Yep.
30 years, you're stuck in this, half-hearted job. And then at 35, or excuse me, 65, you can retire and then you die. And it's like this weird thing. And so if you want to buy a house because you truly want one for whatever reason, that is perfectly acceptable as a goal. But if you want to buy a house because your parents want you to buy a house because that's what they did, because of any of those reasons, that's not reason enough to buy a house and to be saving for a down payment. Renting is cheaper at this point than like the phantom costs of housing, right? Is like
Yep.
there's so much more than just a mortgage. There is maintenance and updates and all these different things that come with it. And yes, it is an appreciating asset. We know that. That's cool. But if you're not like happy doing that, then invest your money in the market and you'll be fine. Like it's just like, so those are some of the bigger goals that I like to have people really lean on. And it's funny because like I work with people on the opposite side who are making $250,000, $300,000 a year, and they're like pinching pennies and they won't take the vacation to Mexico that they've wanted to go on for the last decade. And I'm like, what are you doing? You have the money. You're good. Like find the sitter and go. People, it's funny because people really have both ends of the spectrum of like people have a really hard time saving and understanding how like much those little meaningless purchases really impact them. And then other people are like the frugal penny pitching, almost like cheap people that are like, no, like money is meant to be spent. It's just spend it on the things that you want, not what everyone else is telling you that you should want. And that's the message that I'm like trying to drive home all the time to anybody that comes across my stuff. I'm just like, you get to spend your money. I'm not telling you not to spend your money. It is the mindless, unintentional, purposeless stuff that you're just like looking for that quick hit of dopamine. You had a hard day at work and now you want to feel better quickly. So you go on Amazon, you buy $50 worth of crap that you don't care about. That shows up on your doorstep. Maybe the high lasts a week, two, if you're lucky. And then the cycle begins. Stop doing that and put that $50 towards something that's going to be meaningful, have memories, have experiences attached to it, whatever that looks like for you, right?
So coping queen. I'm curious, how would you coach people in those situations of came home from work, want to go on Amazon for that quick hit? What would you do instead?
Lots of different things. Go for a walk outside is number one. There's actually a lot of research to support like exercise is a really good replacement for like shopping addiction, like different stuff like that.
Oh shit, I didn't know that. Cool.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and people will say like if you really kind of think about it and break it down into like simplistic terms, it's like if you have like an addictive personality that people like to talk about, whatever, changing the addiction is really just do it in a more healthy manner, which that's a whole nother thing. We don't need to get into it, but yes, but that's actually a really good thing is like, if you just literally, this sounds ridiculous and nobody's going to do it because this is how the world works. But if you are about to buy something on Amazon, first and foremost, don't have Amazon Prime. One click to buy option is your doom and gloom. Stop using it. Put it in your cart and do use the 48-hour rule, right? Wait 48 hours and then decide if you actually want the thing. That's number one. Number two is if you won't get rid of Amazon Prime. I have one client, I cannot get her to get rid of Amazon Prime for the life of me. And I'm like, girl, you are wasting money every day. But anyway, like literally put your phone down, stand up and do 10 jumping jacks. You will not need to buy the thing that you were just going to buy. Like get out of the habit of scrolling your phone, like looking, whatever, like put your freaking phone down. That is one of the biggest culprits. Even on social media, it's like you get a influencer ad from whatever, and all of a sudden you're buying the thing 4 seconds later. And you almost like, there's times people literally dissociate as they are buying the thing because it's just
Well,
so
most people when they're scrolling to dissociate. Like that's the whole purpose of the scrolling. And then to like have the ads or even like TikTok shop where it's like, oh, I click literally twice and I've purchased something. Hate that. Hate that for us.
right, right. So so you're really, I mean, again, so then you're kind of figuring out like what is the root here and starting to figure out like where are your spending triggers. You probably know I did a no spend January.
Yeah, you had to buy boots. I saw that.
My boots, yes. I always forget my kids' boots. It almost happened again. AJ was like, pack your freaking boots. When we went to Sedona, it literally almost happened, but we did it. It was okay. Yeah, so I failed it, but I just picked right back up, whatever. But it was really good to have, and some people like totally disagree with no spend months. And I'm like, that's fine. I just wanted to try it to see. And it was really, really helpful for me to see like, where are my triggers? Those freaking Tonys that my daughter loves, the Tony's box.
I
Oh my
know
God.
my son has one too, and it's just constantly going.
It's constantly going, but we didn't watch TV for 2 weeks after she got it. Like it was just, and I don't mind noise. Like I'm fine with it happening. And honestly, like the characters and stuff that she has, I think the narrators are good. The songs are fine. Like it didn't really bother me. And if it did, I was just like, go in your room for a little bit with it. And it was totally fine. But I was like, oh, this is so fun for her. The way she's like dancing around and lighting up and listening to it and just so like into it. I was like, maybe I'll just buy her a couple Tony's characters. Those are $20 a pop. They're
Crazy.
expensive, which I'm like, and now I found out libraries are renting them, which I didn't know. I told my
Oh,
sister-in-law
cool.
we're
I
gonna
didn't
do a
know that.
Tony trade. Yeah, yeah. Check, not all of them, but some local libraries are doing that. So check your public library. But yeah, my sister-in-law and I are gonna do a Tony's trade where like give her 3, she gives me 3, we just borrow them back and forth a little bit, whatever. So there's just different ways to go about it. But I noticed like my kids were 100% my spending triggers. It was like, oh, this is a cute outfit that they don't need because they're already, having drawers overflowing of crap. But I would be like, but it's like $15. Who cares? And then once you realize like $20 Tony, $15 outfit, another $10 book, like that's where my money goes. And so noticing that and being able to pull back a little bit. And it was hard. It was really hard to say no to some of the things that she's so cute. She's like, Mommy, can I just have this? And I'm like, well, like we have the money. And that's what that we do. Like we could, but no, because we want to put that money towards something else. And so I tell her that's the language I use is, oh, and honey, we're not prioritizing that right now. Let's take a picture of it. We'll add it to our wish list, but we're going to prioritize other things right now.
Does that get to you emotionally? Like when you have the money, you want to buy your kid something. What's that emotional experience like for you?
Certainly, yes. And I think the hardest part for me, I don't really mind not like saying no to toys as much. That's not super hard for me. I think the harder part was we went to like this play zone in one of the local malls or whatever, and she wanted to ride one of the rides. No, I'm really trying to say no. And that was harder for me. It was $1. But I really wanted to stick to my plan, this like no spend plan, and $1. That was like gut wrenching to me. I was like, it's just fun for a little bit. And I get it, like being a kid. So another mom that came by and it happened to be a carousel and her kid was on the other car and she bought a ride for her. So I got kind of like an excuse out of that one where I was like, oh, she still got the ride. I didn't even have to buy for it. And I actually didn't have $1 bill on me. So there was kind of like a perfect concoction where I was like, okay, I don't have to feel so badly about it. But there was also a bunch of, we were in the middle of a mall, right? She's like, I want this, I want that. Can we do this? Like, and I walked out actually feeling this enormous sense of pride that I was able to say no. There was no meltdown. She was just kind of like, okay, like she handled it so well. And I think we together handled it so well. And we left and I was just like, okay, I can say no to my kids. Nothing bad is going to happen. And even if she did have a meltdown, okay, fine. You had a meltdown in the mall and you're a kid, you're a 3-year-old, like fine. Like that happens all the time. Who cares? And nobody cared that I didn't buy her anything. And it's so much about us and we think it's so much about our kids, but the
Right.
reality is it's so much more about us. And that's what I kept having to remind myself. And it felt so good to hold strong and true to something that I had determined already for myself. And as moms, that's not something that we really do for ourselves. So I think that was the whole experience.
Well, because ultimately what you're talking about is like, this is the type of parent I want to be. I had to put in work to get here. And so like you are now at the point where a lot of people want to get to. And so what I'm curious about is what would you say to that 16, 17, 18-year-old you who's thinking money is the root of evil and bad things and you don't want to look at it and you don't want to deal with it? What would you say to somebody or yourself at that point in life?
I wish younger kids now, myself included at that time, would have known how much money opportunity can really provide you and not in such a materialistic way. And it's different. Again, it depends on your priorities. Our priorities collectively as a family is time. Like we want time together. We want time and flexibility to do kind of what we want to do. And so what does that look like for us? Well, money buys us that. And so
Right.
and this is true for almost everyone I talk to is like, it's so interesting. If you look back like historically for a second, our grandparents' generation was in the time of the Depression or just coming out of the Depression, kind of depending on when they were born, right? My grandparents, my dad's parents, especially, they lived through it. They both passed now. My dad is quite old. Like they just had like bigger, stretches in between the lineage, or between the generations. And so they were like true penny pinchers because they had to be. Scarcity was like a rite of passage back then. Like you had to survive, right? And so like our parents, my parents didn't get the things that necessarily they would have wanted for one reason or another, whether they could afford it or not. Like my mom's parents could not afford it. My dad's parents could afford it, but he was still told no because of the mindset that his parents held, right? And so when my parents were raising my brother and I, they gave us anything they could, even if they couldn't, well, until the divorce. But as like a young child, we were given toys and clothes and this and that and whatever. And because they didn't have that experience, they wanted to give us the things that they didn't have, right?
Right.
And so now our generation, from what I've seen pretty much across the board, and again, it kind of depends on your own situation, but we want to give our kids time, experience, opportunity, right? All these different things, because that's kind of like the self actualization pyramid. If you're looking at it, it's like, I don't need the
Yep.
stuff. They don't need the stuff. Like, that's not it for us. We care so much more about going to Sedona and hiking in the mountains and having that like experience together, or even like flexibility from your job, right? Like being able to work from home or leave a day early or what, like have time together is so much more valuable. And so then that has to be reflected in your calendar and in your spending, right? Give me your phone, give me your calendar, and give me your statements, and I will tell you exactly where your priorities lie. And it's true. Like if you look at how you're scheduled your time and how you're spending your money, that is what you're valuing at that point in time. And if you want that to change, then that's a reality check for a lot of people.
So just identifying those priorities earlier.
Yeah, I think identifying the priorities earlier and really understanding like what opportunity means. It's not like a new pair of Nikes, which I don't think you could tell a teenager at this point, like, oh, not having the coolest, latest brands. Like that's not the language that you need to use with a teenager for sure. That's not going to go very far. But I think really understanding and breaking it down for them a little bit more of like, well, we're like, I think that word prioritization is really, really massive for any age. Like 3-year-old, 13-year-old, doesn't matter. Like using the language of, well, I'm not prioritizing that right now, really says a lot about you and the things that you want. And I think that's how it needs to be laid out, is like, even when I was in the situation of, if I was at home at either my parents' house, it was really clear where their priorities lied. And it was really clear that it wasn't me. Right.
Oh,
Versus my, but being at my friend's house, their priorities were very clear that it was me, like to feel loved
yeah.
and to feel supported in the way that they were able to show up for me, sometimes using money as a vehicle to do that, right? Is like, yeah, you guys
Mhm.
want to go to the movies? Let's go to the movies. Like, right. Like stuff like that, where it was different. Like their calendars looked different and their statements looked different. And so I think that's a really important distinction.
I think that's a good way to approach things because it's not so much about like just get the job, earn more money, do these things. It's a lot about like figure out what's important and like let that reflect how you make your decisions.
Yeah. And it's not going to change overnight. I think that's, people think we have this like thing in us that like money management and the way we handle our money should be like innate and intuitive, and it's not. And we're never taught it. Our parents didn't teach it to us. So like we have this like weird shame, guilt, embarrassment wrapped up into this thing that we were never taught. And I always equate it to like a language, right? I always say money is a language. So you wouldn't go to Paris and be super pissed at yourself that you don't speak French, even though you've never taken a French class, right? That's just
Right.
true. So why are you so hard on yourself for not speaking a language that you've never been taught, never taken a class on, never tried to understand? And all of a sudden you're like, but I don't understand it. I don't get it. Like, right. You're not gonna until you start educating yourself on how to do some of these things. And I still make mistakes. I would never claim that we went to the store 2 days ago and my daughter looked at this little thing and it was on sale. And I was like, yeah, we're out of our no spend month. I'll buy you this toy. And she's played with it 2 days straight and it's great. So I'm like, is that a mistake? Is that a bad money choice? I don't know. It depends on how you look at things. But for us, yeah, that $12 could have gone into a savings bucket for another vacation, or it could have been spent on her to bring her like instant gratification joy. Fine. It's probably not the right thing to do, but we don't always have to do the right thing. We have to do what feels good too. And so you're not always going to get it right. And your money journey is forever. Like there's no destination. So you also have to get it through your head that like you're gonna mess up sometimes. You just got to get over it. Like
So much like a health journey. Like
oh yeah,
there is no end.
yeah,
They're both just lifelong, lifetime things that you continue to work on and either put your energy towards or don't. And then you deal with the repercussions of them either way.
exactly. Well, it's funny you say that, because the three things that dictate any decision that you are ever going to make in life is your health. Are you healthy enough to do the thing? Money. Can you afford to do the thing? And if you can't, are you going to put it on credit and have to owe way more in interest? Blah, blah, blah. And kids. If you don't have kids, you don't even have to think about that distinction. But if you do, then are the kids coming with us or are they not? Those are the three questions you're
Right.
asking yourself before you do anything, right? Even getting a cup of coffee with a friend. Am I mentally well enough to do that? And can I afford the cup of coffee? How am I paying for it? That's always a question. Anything you do. And so parallels very nicely with physical mental health, right? Is
Yes.
your financial health. And people forget that like financial self-care, that's what it takes. Just like drawing yourself a bubble bath is like a good temporary band-aid, but that's not going to like fix the innate issue. Financial self-care is like your only way out is through. You have to like do the hard work, do the hard thing, look at your finances, know what the heck is happening to understand how to get out of it and do a better job, right?
Thank you for sharing all of your wisdom and how you got here. So many people just don't talk about finances, right? Like, part of the problem is that like money is just a mystery to all of us because nobody feels like they know what they're doing. And so, I mean, I just like talk you up to everybody that I cross paths with. I'm like, yeah, I just like stalked her on Threads and then was like, yeah, she's just going to be my friend. It's fine. And so I just love your content and it's just so relatable to people. And so thank you for agreeing to come on here and talk about your journey. I really appreciate that.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I know that the topics that we talk about on this podcast can be heavy and bring up a lot of emotions for people, and that's no reason to shy away from these conversations. If you're a fan of trying to get these conversations out to as many people as possible, I could use your help. Rating, reviewing, and subscribing to the podcast helps it reach more people. I always love to hear your feedback on the episodes that we put out and the topics that you want to hear more about. So head to www.redbirdcounseling.mn.com. From there, you can send me an email and join our online email community to get more updates about the podcast and everything happening mental health and Redbird Counseling. Be sure to also follow us on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at Redbird Counseling MN and Facebook Redbird Counseling MN21. Until next time, remember, you're not alone, your story matters, be kind to yourself, and don't be afraid to color outside the lines.